Welcome to episode 4 of the People's Project. We do the big hitting topics here today, like the fact that this awesome glass, Josh, holds 600 mils of liquid gold, sparkling water. I think it's amazing. I think most glasses like yours, puny little glasses, hold like 200 mils. So
I can see a big difference between these two, and it's not the volume.
Let's get on to the real topics, or not as interesting as sparkling water in my opinion, but the federal government this week, Josh, have flagged they will be having a mandatory vaccine for returning travellers.
Yep. What do you think about that?
I don't know.
I'm kind of over it.
What do you mean over it?
Well, put it this way. For people who have an issue with the vaccine, they're going to have an issue with this.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I don't have an issue with the vaccine, but I can understand why it's implemented. So I feel like I have less of an issue with it. Do you know what I mean?
Well, the big argument is it's similar to yellow fever, which has been around. The yellow fever vaccines, I've had it when I had to go to Colombia 10, 20 years ago. So they're saying it's just like that. But my main concerns are not really this. My main concern is the effect of corporate pressure.
Yeah, and that's a different issue.
Yeah, well, you may have heard that Alan Joyce has also come out and said that Qantas is going to require a vaccine to do international travel and potentially even domestic travel.
Yeah.
I think that's crazy. But this is a huge concern because we talk about Scott Morrison making a law and people can fight and there's a democratic process. There is no such process with a corporate flexing their muscle.
Yeah, and that's concerning. So an employer can say, you know, I need my employees to have this vaccine. They can make it mandatory or you don't work. Whereas the government have said, we're not going to make it mandatory. So if the companies do, what's the difference?
Well, this has always been the fear. It's been it'll be coercion, like no jab, no pay, or your company, or in this case, you know, you won't be able to go flying or whatever. But this raises for me a larger issue, which is, you know, basically crony capitalism. This idea of effectively legislative change, and we'll talk about it a bit later in the show, but people like Alan Joyce are actually signed up to some pretty big social engineering laws, you know?
And I always recommend caution because, remember, Tony Abbott gave a talk at the Economic Forum. So just because someone has their photo on the Economic Forum website, it doesn't mean, you know, they're fully on board with everything. So, I mean, it would make me feel a lot safer if Alan Joyce's photo and bio wasn't on the Economic Forum website. But
under the Great Reset section, yes.
Let's concentrate on what we can know and try to leave speculation out of it.
Well, look, overall, as I said, this idea of corporatism taking over, you know, in the US, I'm wondering if it's an antitrust issue, like where they had to say, Microsoft, you can't dominate the internet browser market like this. And I think our world's going that way, isn't it? Google, Facebook, they control so many parts of our lives.
Yeah.
So the Ted Cruz argument is starting to carry some water from the US, where maybe they do need to be regulated like a, what do you call it? Like a utility.
Yeah. And I think, you know, that's an argument that can be debated, and I think it's a fair argument because it is behaving and acting like a utility in that it's the telecom of our day, so to speak, and people are communicating with each other. I just got a fact check on one of my Facebook posts today.
What post?
It was a post where one of the lawyers was talking about one of Trump's lawyers was talking about like a lawsuit that they're going to deliver in Georgia. And the thing was that I thought was funny. They said that the fact check is 35,000 votes have not been added to every Democratic candidate. And there's no way of replying to Facebook when you get something like that. So I clicked through and found somewhere to write something. And I said, the fact is that she has suggested it, therefore it's her opinion. Therefore, it's a fact that her opinion is that 35,000 votes have been added. Who is fact-checking you?
No. This is the Galileo meme in real life. I think we did that last week.
Yeah, we did.
All right. I won't do it again. No, I did an interview. All right, I better quickly do it now. So there's a meme of Galileo puts out a tweet saying the universe is actually heliocentric, not geocentric. So the Earth goes around the sun. And of course, there's a Twitter fact check underneath that says 95% of all scientists agree that the universe is geocentric. That's exactly what we're going through right now, I think, in some areas. How about this? Masks. Masks are still being worn outside in Victoria, even though they don't legally have to be worn outside.
Let me tell you this, and this might surprise everybody. As I was driving here today, 2 police officers walking down the street with food wearing masks.
Really?
Yep. You don't have to. It's not mandatory.
No.
But when you see police officers on street patrol wearing masks, tell me you're not going to get nervous.
Well, this article here is from a behaviour expert, and they talk about how it's been so ingrained in the Victorian psyche now that it's easier just to leave it on. And my concern is they never really, in these sort of articles, they never really address the fact that it's actually a big giant stick is how we got here. This is not a natural cultural evolution. This is a engineered, and maybe it's good or bad. I mean, I don't like it, but whatever you want to argue, it is engineered. This was created, and this is not normal. This is something new, and I think we can't forget that.
And that's why I think part of the longevity of the lockdowns were that you forget what normal life is like. And I think that was me personally. I'm a little bit more on the some of these things are intentional. The longevity of the lockdown means that you kind of forget what normal everyday life is like, and you start to think differently about your everyday, what you would normally do. And you tend to be so relieved that you can do some things when you were restrained from doing most things that you forget that, oh, wait, I'm still restrained from doing this, that, and that, and this. I mean, technically, you still can't hug somebody.
There's a lot you
ridiculous.
Yeah. But but this is a real concern. This is what people say the Stockholm syndrome is, because we feel like we've been meted out our freedoms again.
Now, tell me if I'm wrong here, but I thought the Stockholm syndrome was based on a bank robbery or a hostage situation.
I don't know. You fall in love with your captor is the idea.
I don't think that is the case here, because I don't feel like everybody's falling in love with Dan Andrews, although some are. But I think it's more just the generalized sort of behaviorism of negative reinforcement.
Right, coming from that.
So, in other words, the government has negatively reinforced certain behaviours and initiated a fear response in our hearts so that we actually are nervous when we go out without the mask, even though we don't have to.
Correct.
Can I tell you a story?
Yeah.
There was a defector from the USSR who defected from Russia to America. Yeah. And the minder that was assigned to him, got him an apartment, everything was fine. He got him some money. He said now to the Russian, now go out and just live your life. Just go to the movies, enjoy our freedoms. And I'll see you in a couple of weeks. He came back a couple of weeks later, and he found out that the Russian guy had not left his apartment the whole time but to get groceries. And what he realized was that the negative conditioning was so strong that even though he had freedom, he had no idea how to use it. In his heart and in his mind, he was still in the USSR. So you know what this minder did? He became his best friend. He took him out to the movies. He took him out to dinner. He took him to Disneyland. He basically loved him back into society.
How do we need to do that to our fellow Melburnians somehow? Because there was another one. There was a North Korean, a girl who escaped North Korea. She was on the Rubin Report, Dave Rubin on YouTube. And she was talking about how she wanted, for a while after she escaped to the US, she wanted to go back to North Korea and live in oppression because she was so overwhelmed by the freedom and choice in the USA, she didn't know how to behave.
Yeah.
And this goes directly to a number of people who have messaged me on Discernible saying, I know I'm free now to go outside my 5K and I can not wear a mask, but I feel I get to the door and I just can't do it.
Yep, this is classic behaviorism, classic conditioning. If anybody wants to read up, look up B.F. Skinner and the stuff that he did. Or you could even, I suppose, look up Pavlov's dog experiment, where he got a dog to salivate.
The bells.
Conditioning is a very strong manipulation tool.
Well, he's done it, and he's done it well. If we come up with some ideas on how to bust that, we will. So let's also do the Vic Labor budget just quickly. So the Labor budget came out, and just so you know, of course, there's blowouts, debt to the eyeballs, of course. And I think any Liberal in Labor, anyone would have done it at this point in time. Just so you know, stamp duty's being halved. Sure, you're going to buy a house anytime soon.
Well, at $700,000 or $800,000, who can afford it?
Yeah. Well, you get more here than in Sydney. Sydney's a joke. Payroll tax is going down slightly. And of course, there's massive subsidies coming out. And this is always the case. This is the way they want, Dan Andrews and his team and any other left-leaning government wants to fix a lot of the problems in society. And so they come up with stuff like this. This is casual leave, subsidies and stuff like this. Right? So they want to give casual workers sick leave, which is supposed to already be there in the, 19 or 25% leave loading or whatever's already there.
Yep.
Leave loading. Leave. Like it's in the name. Anyway, what concerns me about this is if I sit here and say, no, that's wrong, people can say, oh, you just want to squash the little guys who want sick leave. You're such a heartless person. That's not my problem. We all want them to do well. But what we're talking about is raising the bottom rung of the ladder on every job everywhere and then slugging it onto small business people who are going to pay through a levy after the first year.
This ties into the Alan Joyce and Qantas thing, right? And it might not be obvious at the start. So basically what you've got is, imagine a conical flask shape, something like that, where you've got a long spout and a big bottom. A little bit more extreme than that. So that is the wealth distribution of a community, say, in the first century. Lots and lots of very poor people, very few rich people. And what happened over the last 2,000 years is we've built this thing called the middle class. So you have a shape that's kind of like that, like more of a a vase. Yeah. And so you've got a big middle class. And that big middle class is awesome because it brings the average for everybody up, and you get small businesses who hire workers, and lots of people get jobs. And so the big businesses see the little businesses as competition, and they usually buy them up, or this is where you get the idea of monopolies and stuff like that. But government also look at middle class and say, well, what can we do with you? You're not powerful enough to be sort of like a henchman for us. So you see secular governments just gut punch them over and over again. And this is exactly another big gut punch into the middle class, because you've got businesses that have just gone through a hell of a year. And then all of a sudden, without too much time to recover, they're going to have to pay sick leave for their casuals.
It's funny, I think your perspective on it is more correct than this perspective. But it's funny, it's opposite perspective. You're saying it's a gut punch to small business and the middle class, and yet this would say the opposite. Dan Andrews and the fans would say, no, he's helping the middle class, he's giving them sick leave, all the big robber baron business people should shut up. But here's a real life example. I'm employing more and more people with discernible. And you've seen internally the struggle. I'm trying to, because I earn no money from it, I'm trying to pay for it and so on. There's a kid, he's like 18 years old. He wants to work here. I would love to have him on. But he has no experience. He would be worth maybe, low, $10 an hour, $12 an hour. He's willing to work for free, mind you, but I'm willing to pay him, quite low. Give him experience, a few days a week. I can't. It's illegal. I've got to pay him that $19, $20 an hour. And there's no way he can provide that value. I'm going to be spending a lot of time training him. So, no job.
No job.
No job for him.
That's the end result of the government intervening in the economy to this degree. You don't get more jobs and more fair. You get less jobs because people employing workers have less money to budget for their wages.
Well, the big businesses do, you see. If, some of my guys, if I'm told I have to now pay them sick leave on top of their casual rates, well, maybe I won't put on that next person. I can't afford it. But Amazon sure can.
Yeah.
McDonald's can.
And so then this is where it links in with Alan Joyce. You've got these big businesses who have such thousands and thousands of employees, and they say, no jab, no job.
Yeah.
There's an analyst, an information analyst called James Dines, who I used to subscribe, and he was predicting a couple of things. One of them was the end of jobs, and the other one was the end of international travel. And when I started reading him, I thought, he's a bit of a crazy man. But yet, we're seeing some of those things start to get roots. The end of international travel and the end of jobs.
Well, this is where we're at. And Amazon's profits are up 100%. Wesfarmers and Coles and Kmart, places that I love, quite frankly. But my consumption from them has gone up, and all the small businesses are... So there was someone... I saw an article this morning saying that... was it 1/3 of premises are now for lease or empty in Melbourne CBD?
I'm not surprised.
I've been affected by it. There's at least 2 shops locally up here in the suburbs that are gone because of this. I spoke to the owners.
Yeah, there was a business called Riot who were...
Yeah, art supplies.
Art supplies. They're completely gone.
They were, yes. They were a little bit dodgy in the way the management was handling
the
stuff.
way the manager because they sent them via... Yeah. Let's not get into that.
Right,
the point is that another business that was employing a good number of people has gone belly up, and those people are now looking for jobs.
Anyway, look, that's the news, and I think it's to combat it. The only thing I can think we can do right now is to support local as much as possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right. It's a serious segment. I have to chill out a bit before such a big segment. How about this?
There's echo.
But...
Oh, wait. How does that work?
So this is a Yamaha Transacoustic. What it does is it has a pickup, obviously, but then it has a speaker cone facing against the backboard. And it generates that
so it's
sound.
not electric. It's not an electric.
It is. You can plug it in as a... But so now you've got the raw sound, but you've also got the reverb built into it, and you've even got...
That's a busker's dream.
It's got chorus. So how freaky is that? Try that. I forgot to tell you it's in drop D tuning. Sorry, open D. So this kind of innovation I find fascinating. This is Yamaha. Japanese minds have done that, which is amazing. And the reason why we needed to do that first is because we're now going to explain the whole way that media manipulates stats to make us fearful.
In the same way that you just manipulated us to feel nice.
Well, I hope so. Let's put this away. All right, let me tell you a story, Josh. This week I wanted to investigate the whole idea about COVID's lethality and especially a case study of Sweden. So first of all, I think we have to remember that COVID is not the thing that's killing us all. This is showing the causes of death worldwide. 17 is much the same now in 20. It's cardiovascular disease is the number one.
Yep.
And if we scroll down a bit here, you'll see that to the next graph. This is the causes, deaths by cause worldwide, non-communicable diseases in blue and communicable diseases in red from 1990 to now. So this is 40 years of data. Yep. So we're dying more of lifestyle diseases and less of communicable diseases. But you wouldn't know that from looking at the media. It feels like deadly contagions are on the rise. And if we keep scrolling down on here, we'll see more about the media in some of these graphs. Like that one is deaths by age. So you'll see at the top, a lot of old people are dying more so in the last 40 years. Young people are dying less and less and less. We'll keep going down to another one. What's that one about? No, keep going. That one is road accidents, cancers, causes of deaths. Keep going down to a journalism graph. Keep going. quite a long way. So this site is great. This is ourworldindata.org. And down here, there's some bar graphs which show you how the media reports on causes of death. Here we go. So we've got mosquitoes are the number one killer of people in the world, but they don't pour it on that because that's boring. You know the number one thing that they report on in terms of deaths?
No.
Terrorism.
Really?
Yeah.
How do you judge terrorism?
Well, that's a good point. But we should be way more scared of mosquitoes. Anyway, go down the next graph here. This is it. So on the left, this is the actual causes of death. So you've got heart disease at the top, then cancer, and then so on, and terrorism's down here with nothing. Then on the next one, you've got the number of Google searches. So the second line here, most people are searching for cancer or not heart disease, even though they should be searching for heart disease. And they're searching for some of this middle stuff. But look at that, terrorism, suicide. Then the next one, we've got media coverage from the third column is the New York Times and the last column is the Guardian. So they're roughly the same. And you'll see that media is primarily reporting on terrorism in red at the bottom. Mm-hmm. Then they're reporting on homicide in grey above that. And then suicide and cancer. They're not reporting at all on heart disease. So there's a fundamental mismatch between the feel of what we're dying of from the media and what is reality. But this is not a surprise to you, right? No,
I wouldn't say it is. I mean, I think anyone that's consumed information services like newspapers and news media know that the reporting is stylized. Wouldn't you say?
Clickbaited.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. How many hours of news do you actually watch in the average week?
I don't watch a lot. I skim read it.
Okay. But you would say that you engage with news media a fair amount?
Oh, because of this job, yeah.
Yeah. So how much time do you spend thinking about the information that you've read or seen?
I'm starting to more because later on I'll tell you a story of my own fear issues I had this week with the media, but I never used to, and most people wouldn't. They would consume and allow it to run their minds without really considering what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, look at this graph here. Cancer is searched for 37%. Cancer, in actual terms, these are very close.
Yes, that's accurate.
People are searching for what they're concerned about. And what they're concerned about is their personal health, and they're minimally concerned about things that are happening in other parts of the world. So that makes a lot of sense. But here, that's extremely telling about how much you should trust news media as far as getting a feel for what's happening in the world.
But if that was updated for COVID, because that's only to...
Oh, yes, I'm sure it would be quite massive.
COVID would be half that graph.
But this was probably at a time where terrorism was the boogeyman that you didn't see.
It was up to 2016, this graph, yeah.
Because now you've got a little invisible bug that you can't see.
Yes.
That's in the air, and you could run into it. Have you ever noticed how they talk about COVID as if it can think?
Yes. They anthropomorphize.
Yeah, and that is a tactic to get you scared.
It's an enemy. Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about behavioural. We were talking about behavioural conditioning. Yeah. This is part of that, getting you scared about something you can't check or see.
I have a perspective on this, though, that it's not deliberate. Well. It is deliberate. Let me explain. I used to work for an artificial intelligence company, and we would roll out AI algorithms for the biggest newsrooms in the world, BBC, Le Monde, Sydney Morning Herald, all of these people, News Corp. And what our algorithms would do is it would watch the audience real time, much faster than a human can. And it would know by measuring their behavior how to get the most rise out of them. So it would post certain stories at certain times and reteach itself all the time. So it was like a self-reinforcing loop, and that's how you get clickbait.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So did you know why they wanted that?
Money. So newsrooms around the world are dying, 100%. and advertising revenues crashing because the eyeballs are moving to new media like this.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in. And what these algorithms were designed to do is to get these people back on top. Now, that's why I say it's not deliberate. I mean, it's deliberate that they're trying to get the clicks, but they're not actually trying to spin a particular narrative except to make money.
Well, why are they not moving with where technology is going? Why are they trying to draw it back? Why not just give up the newsroom and go into forums like this? People seem to want more conversation, time to think through things properly.
I think it's too easy for them to double down, and they've got, their revenue is, their clicks and traffic have gone down by 40%. And they just want to recover some 10%. They're just trying to claw back their existing revenue sources. So anyway, that was my experience working in the industry, and I think that's what we're seeing. I think that the media is pushed towards this crazy reporting from a commercial point of view. I think that's what's happening. But I did my own dive into fear this week because I was doing this case study on Sweden. Did they do a good job or did they not? What do you think the dominant narrative is right now?
I would suggest most people think that Sweden is what we should copy.
Most people, not just clear-thinking people. You mean even the I Stand With Damners?
The people that I'm involved with on a regular basis would see it that way, but I suspect, yeah, you're probably right. I suppose it would be sort of like a hard line, and you'd have people that are really adamant that Dan's awesome, and the other people that are really adamant that why can't we do a Swedish version?
Well, Sweden had no lockdown, right? And they had an initial huge number of deaths in the beginning, which is quite normal for any virus, really. But then after that, they've had none, almost none. Cases very, very low. And so people are saying they developed herd immunity. So I went to look at the stats. So if you look at this other tab here, this is from Euromomo. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see these are across Europe. These are all the countries. So we'll go through different countries in a minute. But basically, you'll see this is from 2017 to 2020. You'll see this spike at the beginning of 2020. This is for all age groups across Europe. And you'll see that a lot of people died. And I've been taught this week that the best way to measure these things is not through COVID stats, because we know there are issues there. The influenza is being reported as COVID, all this kind of stuff. So what we need to measure is all-cause death rates, just death.
In general.
Yeah, because if death is going up,
yeah,
something's off.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying, yeah.
So I came into these stats and I did see a spike. Now, while we're here, you'll notice 0 to 14 years is going down. In the last 5 years, the death rate of young people is going down. 15 to 44 is stable. 45 to 64, there's that spike for COVID at the beginning of 2020. 65 to 74, 84. This spike, all old people are getting. Now, this is the same that you would see in a flu season, except it's more pronounced.
Yep.
Because of COVID. Okay, I understand. Moving on. If we keep going down, excess mortality. This is what we wanted to measure, and this is what I wanted to find in terms of figuring out whether Sweden's done a good job. Because you'll notice everyone in the news lately, people are saying, see, herd immunity did not work in Sweden because they're having an explosion of cases right now, or infections, as we've discussed. But their death rate is not climbing. So I came on here to find the stats for the good people at home to say, yes, look, this is the reality. And I find myself, if we go down, we've got actual countries coming up, and we'll be able to see Sweden's down here somewhere. Here we go. So in here, I actually found an increase in, it was on a different side, I think, but in here I found an increase in Sweden's deaths in just the recent period. And I found that, yes, deaths are going up with cases. And I had this real fear reaction that I was wrong, and that Sweden is a basket case. And this is really concerning to me because why did I have like an emotional reaction to data? Am I that wedded to Sweden being a success that if data proves me wrong, I have an emotional reaction? I felt like a leftist.
Yeah, I've felt like a leftist on occasion. Well, I mean, I think people need to think about how does news sort of get into you? Like if you hear something, let's just say I came and I said, Matt, I I saw your wife kissing another man. Instantly, if you believe me, you're going to have an emotional response. And that's usually where crime happens.
Yes, in the passion. Yeah.
Right? If you're able to have a little bit of space between the emotion and the action, then you're going to do something a little bit more measured, right? So news doesn't give you the opportunity to process, right? And so you hear something and you start to take it in, and there's no filter really, you know? You just sort of take in the information. And in order to think through something critically, it takes effort and it takes a little bit of practice and skill. Most people don't practice and have the skill of being able to read something critically. So the information stays in you in this ball of emotion. And so what you experienced was that ball of emotion, when it was touched or prodded, it came out. And so when people are quote unquote triggered, it just shows that they haven't been able to, or they haven't been allowed to process whatever information has triggered them, so that they're still in the form, it's still in a big ball of emotion for them.
This is very rare to happen to me. So I was shocked.
Well, what happened? Like, what did you do in response?
So I processed it and I thought, well, I have to be led by the data, and perhaps I'm going to come on the show today and say, yep, Sweden's a basket case, herd immunity didn't work. And I had to accept that reality, because data is data, as long as it's not corrupted, and there's arguments around that. But I'm looking at the best we can, which is all-cause death rates. So I processed that, and it just struck me that any point in that journey, from the cases are coming back in Sweden, I could have jumped, as a journalist, I could have then jumped off on that and written a fear article. Or the next bit, cases are rising but deaths are not, but no, look, deaths are going up. Then I could have, again, jumped off the train at that point and written a fear article. And at any of these points, I just felt like the media doesn't go deep enough, because I kept going deeper and found something. But they don't. They just grab their headline, as I said, they're trying to get the clicks, and that's what we're seeing. Everyone's grabbing the fear story, getting their clicks. But they need to go deeper into, this is the excess death rate. So this is a difference between deaths as expected year on year in a moving average, and what is happening this year.
Right.
So if you have a lot of excess deaths, that means something funny happened, like a pandemic. Yeah. So if we look at here's Italy. So Italy up a bit is, Italy has that, and again, so right now they're having excess deaths. So that would tell me that COVID is happening, or something's happening, but COVID's happening in Italy, but it's not happening above them in whatever country that is.
Malta or Luxembourg.
Ireland. See, Ireland had a spike at the beginning of the year and is nothing now. Luxembourg is flat. If we go down to Sweden is what we're talking about, right? Sweden's death rate, if you hover the mouse over the far right of that graph, it's minus 0 point something. See, they're actually having less deaths right now, excess deaths in Sweden. They expected more deaths on any normal year. So
do you know, Sweden did instill a lockdown, a really harsh one. Do you know what they did?
What?
They made it so that you can't gather outside in more than groups of 9.
When was this?
This was probably a week ago.
Oh yeah, it's a new lockdown.
And this is the harshest one that they've done.
Yeah.
You can't actually buy alcohol at pubs and clubs after 10 p.m.
Okay. Yeah, this is new.
That's bad.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Okay, because you love alcohol.
People love alcohol.
It's such a... Yeah.
But look.
Death, I know.
It's working.
No, but this has been minus since about week 20 or so.
Does a minus death rate mean people are rising again?
This is a minus excess death rate.
Excess death rate. Sorry.
So but my point is, every stat that I went through was triggering me.
Yeah.
Saying, no, Sweden's doing terrible, Sweden's doing terrible, Sweden's doing terrible, until you finally get to this stat at the bottom of the pile that says Sweden is doing flipping great.
How many people do you think on average can interpret a graph?
People would want to say 50%, but I reckon it's really low. I reckon it's 25%.
I get the feeling that the problem that the lockdown has exposed is people's deficit in knowing how to interpret information. They're looking for someone to interpret it for them.
Yes.
And so therefore they run to something that's easy, which is the television or the newspaper or the radio, and they choose what they like. So if I'm a conservative, I might run to Fox News or I might run to some of the talk radio shows.
Confirmation bias.
Exactly. And so I think that this has exposed a bigger problem that needs to be addressed, and that is teaching people how to think about information. Let me ask you a question, and I'm putting you on the spot, I realise.
Sure.
If you had to come up with a definition of thinking, what would you say?
For me, it's like a cow chewing the grass. It's having something in your head and masticating on it round and round.
So that would be a good analogy. Do you reckon you could come up with a definition that you might see in a dictionary?
Of thinking?
Yeah.
Holding a concept in your head and weighing it, exploring it.
Cool.
Time.
That's good.
Yeah.
I heard one of the best definitions I've ever, well, I didn't hear it, I read it. One of the best definitions I've ever seen. And that was from a West Point graduates ceremony. A general was talking about leadership. And in it, he gave a definition of thinking. Thinking is concentrating on something long enough to form an idea about it.
Oh.
And I thought that was great because some people, like myself, take a little bit more time to think about things in order to form an idea. And in this hustle and bustle, rush, especially in a fear-based world with COVID, how much time do you actually spend sitting down and on purpose concentrating on the information that you've been given and thinking about it? I don't think a lot of people are spending enough time trying to be calm and think through these things, which is why I think I saw 2 police officers wearing the mask, why I keep seeing people wearing masks even though they're outside. I hear people saying just some of the most ridiculous slogans, repeating some of the most ridiculous slogans, not only for this issue, but lots of issues. And I really think we need to start to practice thinking through information.
Well, that's great advice. I agree with you. It's great advice, and it scares me that I'm known to be a person who can think clearly and help explain these concepts rationally to people, and yet I share my vulnerable story of how rubbish I was this week.
Yeah, totally.
To show how vulnerable we as humans are. Well, you're not vulnerable. You're amazing.
No, I'm vulnerable. I have a good front, but let me tell you something. Your experience is normal. You
Absolutely.
are normal.
Absolutely.
But you didn't stop when you had the emotional response.
Of course, but most will stop. And
Most will.
And media rely on this.
Because it's unpleasant. If you like, one of the main reasons why I think people don't hear both sides of an argument is because when you hear the argument that you don't agree with, you have an emotional response, and people don't like those feelings, so they say, no, you have to be quiet now because I'm having feelings that are not good.
Because I'm having feelings.
It's true. I mean, I want to encourage people to talk to each other. Now, if 2 people who have differing opinions on an issue can't talk to each other, what is the hope of our politicians being able to do it? What is the hope of us not just being sort of company men or team players and going, whatever Labor comes up with, I'm good with. And, people conservative saying, whatever Labor comes up with, I'm totally against. It's not really a world I want to live in. I don't want to live in the COVID lockdown world, but I also don't really want to live in the everybody at each other's throats all the time world either.
I'm with you. Look, I think that's what we wanted to explain, really, is not so much these stats, although it does show that Sweden is doing very, very well. It's to get to these realities, you've got to push through all that fear.
You've got to push through.
Yeah, and we've got to get a lot smarter at the way more self-aware of the way we're handling these things, like you said.
And just to leave everybody with a bit of a fact, so a new study published in Frontiers in Public Health conclude that neither lockdowns nor lockdown stringencies were correlated with lower death rates. Now, this is something I got from fee.org, which I fact-checked. And so basically, stringency of the measures settled to fight pandemia, which is what we're going through, including lockdown, did not appear to be linked with the death rate. So in other words, what the countries are doing as far as lockdowns go don't seem to be having an effect on a greater or lesser death rate. Like Sweden isn't doing lockdowns, they're doing okay.
The facts are on our side. We just need to make sure we don't get caught up in the emotion along the way. In fact, that brings us into the next segment. Remember this, you're going to love this. I'm talking about elephants and the problem of the fear virus in our mind. Have you heard the story of the elephant and the rope? This is how it goes. You take a baby elephant, you put a rope around its leg, you attach it to a peg in the ground. The little baby elephant can't go anywhere, but the key is when it grows up, it still thinks that that little tiny rope attached to that little tiny peg in the ground can hold it. It's not true, but it believes it. You've conditioned the elephant to believe that way. I weigh, about 100 kilos, I think. I'm 6 feet tall. The largest elephant ever measured was 13 feet tall, double my height, and weighed 11,000 kilos. So that's 50 of me, and another 50 of me standing on the first 50. That's 100 of me, equaling a big, strong elephant. I've since confirmed with trainers that this technique is actually how they do it. They actually condition the elephant to believe that it needs to follow this rule, even though it can break away from this peg. And so it is with our battle for reason and for rationality and for the truth and for open discussions against the authoritarians who would presume to rule our lives by decree. You see, they appear as the big, powerful elephant, but they are not our real enemy. The people you disagree with politically, that's not the enemy. What you're fighting against is the fear and the sense of injustice that they so clearly drives their actions. And we need to remember that that fear is indifferent to whether it infects their mind or it infects our mind. If you take, for example, a climate alarmist fighting a climate denier, fear doesn't care who wins that intellectual cage fight, which is probably full of ad hominem attacks, as we often see. Fear simply sits back laughing, victorious no matter who wins that debate. We can't allow this. We have to stand for reason. We have to stand for open debate. We have to see the people on the other side as humans. We're all on the same team, Team Human. And so let's reject those cheap stereotypes, because we wrestle not against the flesh and blood people on the other side of an argument, but with the fear that so easily consumes them and will no sooner turn its appetite on us if we let it. So, don't be fooled by the big, scary elephant. It is a mere distraction for what the real enemy is.
Now it's time for Did You Know?
Did I know what?
Did you know that medical practice has standards?
What are you talking about? This one in the notes. Where are you taking us?
Where am I taking you? I'm taking you to the vaccines.
Oh, right. What about them?
The tests that are being done. I was researching them to try and find flaws in the tests.
What do you mean?
The vaccine figures.
The 90%
90% effective.
So this is AstraZeneca, Pfizer, and the Oxford vaccine claim they're 90% effective. Keeping in mind that most influenza vaccines, coronavirus vaccines, are roughly 40 to 60.
40 to 60, but these are new. So these are vaccines that are based off mRNA. So they would, if they get approved, they would be the only ones on the market. Mm-hmm. So this is a new technology. It's been, around for a while. They've been toying with it, but it's the only mRNA vaccine that would be on the market if it gets approved. But I was looking at the research because I've seen people talk about medical research online and they don't know how to read a medical research paper. And so I was trying to look for flaws. And guess what? I couldn't find any.
Good.
And so then I looked for, okay, well, I need to re-educate myself about the tier system of evidence in medical research. And so if you imagine a pyramid, at the very base, you've got anecdotal evidence. So I take this, this is how I feel, this is what happens. And then it goes all the way up to fully peer-reviewed, internationally published, big, massive studies, right? Where we are on the vaccines is on the lower half of that pyramid, right? The studies that have... Now, the studies on the vaccine haven't... The research hasn't been published or peer-reviewed yet.
No, hang on. These are industry-funded. When they say 90%, that's AstraZeneca funding their own internal... This is a press release number.
Yes, that's right, but it's also legitimate.
Okay.
So what I mean by that is the math works if you understand how they do these statistically. So they're not lying to you. It is 90% effective. But it's on the basis of a double-blind test where they got 44,000 people in the trial. They split it up. Half got the placebo, half got the vaccine. And then they waited for people to get COVID. And I think the number was about 94 got COVID. And it showed the way the math works. It's not simple. So don't go 90 into 5 and then times it out. That's not the way that they get the 90 number. But basically they worked out that it suggests that the vaccine is 90% effective. Now, that is a legitimate number, and that is why everybody's really excited about it, because that's great. Now, normally, that would mean now we get to move to the next level of research, and we do more testing, and we get peer-reviewed stuff. But guess what? Because of the emergency order, we're not going to be doing that.
What, we're just going to print?
We're just going to... So they'll print it, but the governments are already... pre-purchasing, right?
Yeah, desperate, yeah.
So the actual research that would have happened before it got released is going to be a live test, so to speak, in that it's going to be the worldwide.
When they say fast-tracked is what they're talking about.
Yeah, they're fast-tracking it. And so basically what you're going to get is, you know, Pfizer are doing the right thing. They're doing good studies, right? But people are thinking, oh, these numbers are so low. No, these are the numbers you would expect at this level, right? And so because it's being an emergency, it's been pushed through really quickly, we're not going to get to do the normal things that you need to do in order to get it properly approved.
Sounds safe.
It's not necessarily unsafe is what I'm trying to say.
I understand, but that's not how you do these things. You make sure that they're safe.
But tell me... I mean, if you made a list of all the standards or the things that have been just blown to the side during this COVID thing.
Well, that's. I mean, okay. So let's talk about COVIDnomics.
Yeah.
And are you done with vaccines?
Yep.
Yeah. COVID. Even people who are willing to take vaccines are not willing to take that one.
I know.
Because of what you've described.
But at the same time, I want everybody to know that, you know, think through it. Like. For myself, I'm not giving anybody any advice, but for myself, I'm going to wait as long as I possibly can to get that vaccine, if I get it at all. That's my personal choice.
All right, COVIDnomics. So this is something that's come out, and I think it was in the Australian, but they're saying there's a new era of money, financial management. Everything's out the window. Just spend. Universal basic income was a bit weird a year ago when Andrew Yang was saying, but now everyone's on board.
This has nothing to do with COVID.
Oh, here we go.
This has nothing to do with COVID. Like, I mean, you might notice by now, I like to go into the past to show you that the present is very similar. It's exactly the same. Has anyone ever heard the name Ben Bernanke?
Yeah.
He was doing quantitative easing, right? Yeah. This is basically
printing
massively increasing debt. The thing that's a bit of a surprise is that Scott Morrison is doing it in Australia. Let me ask you something. If you want to reignite a dead economy and you have a GST so 10% on all
consumption.
Wouldn't it be better to take off the GST than to print more money?
Of course, but they brought in the GST, and the argument was it was a simpler, fairer tax.
Well, let me tell you something that you might not know.
Surprise, surprise.
Well, that's why it's Did You Know, hey?
No, but it's usually you telling me something I don't know. All right, go on.
If you tax something, you get less of it.
No, because they tax our incomes.
And you get less of it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. No, you're talking about measuring demand down, pushing demand down.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is I'm going to bring in a favourite litmus test of mine, which is smokers. Smokers have been taxed the bejesus out of.
Yeah, but they're addicted.
They are addicted. But yet, smoking rates and people who take up smoking, the rate has gone way down because of how expensive it is.
Oh, so it's working.
It's working. It's almost like a financial law that if you tax something, you'll get less of it.
Yes.
But if you overtax something, you'll create black markets.
Yes, of course.
And you'll create tax avoidance, and you'll cause some problems.
Yeah.
So when we do quantitative easing, what they could do is take away taxes.
Yeah.
So if their stated intent is to reignite the economy,
they would do that.
They would do things that would logically reignite the economy.
Well, that's why Gladys is doing a form of that by taking away stamp duty in New South Wales, replacing it with a land tax, and
but like I said before,
well.
how much money in turnover each year is housing prices? I mean, this is kind of out of reach for a lot of people to access this benefit.
You're advocating abolition of the GST.
But guess who gets paid with the GST money?
The government collects it and then distributes it
to the states.
To the states, yeah.
And so if you take away the GST, you're basically cutting off the part of the income of the states.
But how are they funded before the GST?
Exactly. They were funded by, I suppose...
Their own state taxes.
I think it was state taxes.
Yeah, but they've bloated now. They've got all this money... They've just expanded. But this is... Okay, you're raising a larger point, though, that this is an ongoing thing long before COVID. And you're right, because someone wise said to me... Wasn't you? Someone wise said to me, the left are winning the culture war and the policy war.
You stay right there. Right. I saw this in the notes and I wanted to pick this up big time. They're winning. Okay, let me ask you a question. When does a war start?
I don't know. When the first shots are fired?
Yeah, so let's go there, right?
Yeah.
So what happens before the first shots are fired?
Tensions,
positioning, posturing, all that sort of stuff. It's not until the first shot's fired or a declaration of war is made that war's on, right?
Yeah.
When does a war end?
When surrender.
Exactly, or you've obliterated the enemy, right? Yes. Are you surrendering?
I'm not.
Am I surrendering?
No, but a lot of the country are.
Maybe they are, but not everybody. The war isn't over until it's over. This is not the end of the war. They're not winning. They've just declared war now.
No, but hang on. All right, I had a point. So they are winning the policy war and the culture war in the sense that every time a right-wing government wins, what do? They implement the left-wing policies.
Yeah.
If you look at, this is a Gideon Rosner argument, actually. All the things that have happened in the last 10, 20, 30 years have been the left pushing an agenda, the right-wing get in to oppose it, and we all get annoyed that the right-wing don't do a good job. And
so much so that some people say in America they have Socialist Party D and Socialist Party R.
Yes, exactly. And so that's the point. And now it's COVID, and it's just going to increase it more. And we've got the Great Reset.
So let's just say they're doing what they've always done. They're just changing what they tell us is the reason.
Okay, so I'm going to do a much longer explainer on the Great Reset, but I've been into their podcast and their book again. In the first episode of the World Economic Forum podcast, they have Prince Charles speaking on it, and a number of very large people, heads of corporations. So when you go to the World Economic Forum website and you see names like Alan Joyce and other corporate leaders signed up to it, putting their face and name to it, it's not just virtue signaling. I've been listening to them on the podcast.
They're legit.
They are legit. I haven't heard Alan Joyce on the podcast, but other leaders of world banks. And people like Prince Charles nakedly say, this is our opportunity to finally get done what has needed to be done this whole time, but we weren't able to do it. Now we can do it with COVID.
I think you need to plug my spin-off.
So, are you going to explore Great Reset in your show?
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explore the background to where we are now.
Oh, okay. All right, so Josh is talking about a spin-off show where he schools me all the time on this show, but now he can school all of us on his own show.
And don't worry, I'll leave the ruler at home. You won't get in trouble.
So we're working out how that's going to look and make sure he looks pretty and everything on the show. So that should be coming, hopefully, first episode next week. We'll see how we go. Very excited about that. Keep an eye on Discernible to see when that's coming out. But look, yeah, they are open and naked about it. And the reason is because they believe in what they're doing is very, very important and it's legitimate and all of that. So there's no question there in their minds. And they're coming out in favor of this massive social engineering. And look, we're not going to have a lot of time to go into Keynesian versus Austrian economics. Maybe we can do a short version. Basically, this shift worldwide away from everything we've known and the way the economy works into this COVIDnomics, or really it's not even COVIDnomics, it's just pure, you want to talk Keynesian?
It's like a rose by another name. It's the same thing. So Keynesian economics is basically where a government buys its own debt, which sounds like a fox chasing its tail. But the way it works is it basically increases the general money supply. And I want to plug a couple of books. This first book, I feel bad plugging because it's expensive and it's old, but it's by Jens O. Parsons. It's called When Money Dies. And there's another great book Dying of Money is Jens O. Parsons' book. There's another book that you can get if you want to read up on this, and it's by Adam Ferguson, and it's called When Money Dies, The Nightmare of Deficit Spending, Devaluation and Hyperinflation in the Weimar Germany. So if you're interested in this, those two books are great. The second one is more available.
Well, yes, and also your spin-off show, I think you should cover Keynesian and economics.
Yeah, Keynesian is easy to understand in a nutshell. Yeah. Austrian economics is a little bit more complicated.
Okay. Maybe there's a better comparison that you could make than I've just spewed out on the page there. But look, we're going to have to be short on Did You Know? We've been going for a while. We're coming up to the hour. We have a real... there's an announcement. So we need to create something called Discernible Crew. My Facebook inbox is a disaster. So we have a live event coming up and there is no way to track people who want to come and so on. So what we're doing is we're creating this. If you go to discernible.io website, you can hit this page, click on Join the Crew in the top right. Basically, it's an email list just for me, and I'm going to send out all the stuff that I usually do, like I give stuff away sometimes. The invites to the event are going there. So there you go. Sign up. It's just me, and we'll send out cool stuff that way. I'm thinking about doing some group hangouts. I've been doing that with some people lately.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Do you think people want to hang out with us?
Well, maybe not with us, but definitely with each other.
Well, a mentor of mine said we're basically going to be creating a better Q&A.
Yeah.
That show. So this first event coming up in a couple of weeks will hopefully be the precursor to, what did Q&A do? Weekly events. Maybe we could do monthly Q&As. And thank you for agreeing to come. So Josh is one of our guests. Josh is going to be interviewing one of our panels. We have two panels. I'm going to run one and Josh is going to run the other. So I look forward to seeing you there. That's where to go for details. And thank you for joining us for episode 4 of The People's Project. I think overall some of this news can be a bit scary, but I think we've given enough tools, resources, and hope to get us through. Do you want to do the parting word?
Sure. I just noticed that I've had my glasses on the table the whole time, haven't even used them once. So, have a great week and make sure you take care of each other.